I'm now joined by Hanley's parents, Brian and Rhonda Swan. It's a pleasure to have you guys. Thank you for coming in all the way from Bali. Obviously, you've been, I think, traveling all over the country. In fact, you do a lot of traveling. Tell me, like, when did you don't seem to live like the stereotypical life. It's not a 9 to 5 job. You're, coming home. Maybe you both are working, and you see your daughter for a few hours at night. Um, was that a potential for you, or were you always able to sort of live outside the box? Like, what shifted? What happened?
Let's you start.
Yeah,
About your
because
job.
no, I mean, we actually, we grew up in the U.S. Brian's from, Illinois. I'm from Michigan, and I grew up with the American dream on my mind. Like I knew that, my mom didn't work. My family was, blue collar, and I wanted to get an education, got my master's, and wanted to run a huge corporation. So I actually started off and moved to California with my first big corporate job, and I was like working and grooming to run the whole Western division, of a big company. And so that was like our American dream. He was a robotics engineer, and it shifted a few years, about 3 years before Hanalei was born. I actually witnessed something that just completely shifted my whole mindset. I went, we lived in San Diego. We moved here. Brian and I actually met surfing in the water in San Diego 21 years ago. Yeah, and I went to a meeting at 7 a.m. I did that, traffic down the 5 for about an hour, and went into a meeting. And the woman that I wanted to be like, that I thought, the perfect, the hair, the bag, the shoes, done, corporate, everything. I watched a woman walk in late to a meeting, about 15 minutes late, and she stopped the meeting and said, "You're late." And she's like, "I'm sorry, I just had a baby. And she's 6 weeks old, and I had to drop her off at daycare." And the woman started to cry. And at that time, I mean, we didn't even talk about kids. We had just gotten married. Like, we were corporate, executives. We're killing it in life. And my whole body shifted. And I saw this woman, the fear in her eyes that she dropped this baby off. And I went, whoa, wait a minute. This baby's 6 weeks old. This woman's coming to work at 7 in the morning. My boss said, if you don't come in on time and leave at 6 o'clock at night and pick the baby up, you'll never be able to have enough money to put food in this baby's mouth. And my whole world shifted.
Wow.
So that was what we thought we wanted to have.
And then you shifted out. Describe your life now. How did you shift it?
Well, how it shifted. We were both corporate. I was a robotics engineer, and she said to me, she goes, "This was the day after. I want to have a family." I said, "This is why we bought this big house on the hill." And she goes, "I'm not going to put my family in daycare." And I said, "I don't care if I'm my boss's boss's boss. We're never going to be able to afford this house." And she goes, "So you better find something, find another job." I go, "You better find something you can work from home." And she said, "Done." And it started that way. She was online being successful, and she retired me from my corporate job. And then what happened was the 07, 08 real estate bubble, and we lost everything financially. And what happened from there, we were put in a spot of where do we go from here?
But Hanalei was just born.
Yeah.
This is so crazy.
My son's 11. We had our kid right about the same time, just a little bit more.
Yeah, I mean, it was wild. Like, we went on this path after I said, I'm not working anymore. I mean, that's a hard shift, right? We were, doing really well, 6 figures, but we needed 2 incomes. Yeah. And I watched this interview with Steve Jobs, and he's like, "Look, the internet." I'm like, "What, the internet?" Like, it barely even came out, right? And I said, "Look, I'm going to look for ways that I can leverage, create, business structure online." But we were doing extremely well for 3 years. Like, I retired him, like he said, and then we were putting ourselves on a plan that I could have a baby, never put her in daycare. We started investing heavy in real estate so that I knew when she was born, I got all this, real estate properties, we're going to do well. We're just going to live that new way of thinking, an American dream. But we then did lose, everything. And she had just been born when we found out that all the investment that we pulled out, our IRA, you pulled out your dad's life insurance, every single thing that we had put into this was gone. So you want to talk about really considering, do I go back to get that job again?
Right. Yeah, maybe we're wrong.
But I'm looking at, I was right, exactly. And that's what we were so judged even before we even started traveling. Like, it was like, be responsible. Get a real job. You have a baby now. Like, what's wrong with you guys? and then once we found out that we had to, cut our losses, and I'm looking at her in the eyes going, you're the whole purpose of why we did this. And I had a vision and a vow to never put her in daycare. So that was our driving force. And so when we found out we lost everything.
Yeah, we had a decision, and we're like, okay, where do we go from here? Go back and get our corporate jobs, or, I like to call it living my perfect day. And it really starts back from my father. My father, I grew up in a town of 2,000 people, cornfields of Illinois, and my father, he actually was gay. My mom and dad divorced, and so that was way back 30-some years ago.
Before that was accepted. I mean,
Before it was accepted.
A little tiny family in a town of 2,000, this family, and then they find out the dad is gay.
And
it was huge
then
for you guys.
He contracted AIDS.
Yeah.
And from the age when I was Hanale's age, I knew death, basically. I got to see him living. He knew he had an expiration date. So by the time I was Hanale's age, he's like, everything shifted. He wasn't sure if he was going to live 6 months, a year, 2 years, 5 years. And he's like, I want to go travel. He's like, I had two brother and sister. He goes, who wants to go traveling? Because he wanted to go see the things before he was going to pass. So that's kind of like the long story of how it all started. So when it came to a point to where we're like, do we go back and get our corporate jobs? I'm like, no. I'm like, this is something, she made a vow to Hanale, and we said, you know what, this internet thing is going to keep on going. Let's go do it, because we don't know when our expiration date may be.
You listen to how clearly she speaks. One of the things, I just wonder how we're raising our kids. I mean, first of all, a lot of the things we discuss here, should we homeschool? Should I homeschool my kids? People are really grappling with that. In California, for those people that aren't vaccinating, they're being left with very few options. They think, and I say, the school system's terrible. I mean, if you have to get your kid out of the school system, then do it. But what were some of the choices you make? Did you vaccinate Hanley to begin with?
No, we didn't. When I opened my mind up to really what was happening, I started doing all the research. I'm like, I have a family member that child has autism. And I remember seeing her bright-eyed, beautiful little girl. And she went and got, I don't know which shot it was. It came back a completely different person. And that's when I, got pregnant. I'm like, wait a minute. I'm like, I'm making a choice for her body. And I don't know what we're putting in our bodies. And we didn't have the choice back when we were kids because our parents weren't educated. We started opening up our mind to so many different thoughts. Like she was supposed to be born at home, but she was 33 days early. So I had to have her in a hospital. You want to talk about the battle? I was like, don't touch me. You don't put anything in my body, because if it's going to make me numb, what's it going to do to a tiny little baby?
Right.
I mean, and that was the kind of stuff that we were so passionate about. And we started just exposing our mind. And
did you have a battle at all? Were you both on the same page through all
No,
that?
we were both on the same page at this
I
point.
presented my case pretty strong. I'm like, look at this. And there were some books that I was really heavy in.
I believe you. I believe you could
So there was no battle. It was more of when she was presented and she's giving me this book, I'm like, are you kidding?
Yeah.
Like everybody gets vaccinated. That's kind and she's like, no, I'm doing my research. I'm like, all right, keep going.
Now, how about for you? I mean, we see everyone wants to talk about the story of the children that are starting to say, I'm not sure I agree with what my parents did here. Do you ever question that decision? When you look at a lot of people that are talking about environment tend to say vaccines are one of the great things that save the planet. Like it saves children's lives. So there is an actual sort of dichotomy in the world that you're in. What do you feel about that?
So I have never gotten, the only time I've ever gotten deeply sick was once, and that was when we were in a high pressure of altitude, and I got altitude sickness. Never once have I had to go to the doctor and get diagnosed or get terminally sick, or I'm not sure how to correctly say this. I'm just trying to go off my brain right now.
Talking about right,
but
getting cancer and things like that.
But I haven't gotten sick, and I've been able to travel. And how I've seen it is you adapt to your surroundings. Our bodies are the smartest thing that has ever been created, and we know how to fight off disease. We know how to do all these incredible things, and so it's about adapting to your surroundings. I feel like when kids are sheltered, like they're in their house all the time, or their parents don't want them to go outside and see the world, or they don't want them to get sick because they're afraid. The whole thing is about exploring. it's about learning and it's about trying new things. And so our bodies adapt to our surroundings. And so I don't think I've ever gotten really horribly sick.
So have you
but-
guys been to like Africa or India or like?
We've been to Africa. She didn't go to Africa. Oh no, she was in Morocco. Sorry, yeah.
Because I think
but-
I think it's easy to think in America.
Yeah,
I mean,
we're all-
so my philosophy with my kids, they're not vaccinated,
Yeah.
but I'm not sure. I've always said I'm not quite sure if I'm going to go to places because I would
Yeah.
agree that our bodies are designed to drink the water, the air, the food that I'm living in, but to go to other places. But you guys are like trekking
yeah.
around the
Yeah.
world, which takes a whole other set of
I mean,
cojones to it. Like, does it ever challenge you?
Totally.
Like, yeah.
I mean, we've been, we didn't go to India. She just finally went to India this last year because of that reason. We had to be really aware.
So you waited. You said, we're not going to go in while she's
yeah.
proud. We want a strong immune system.
Yeah, I mean, we went to a lot of holistic doctors, and I asked, like, how do I protect my child? Like, we were afraid, like, especially with the medical side of it all. I mean, I remember taking her to the very first pediatrician, and we were so attacked. I'm like, I don't even know what to say to these people. Like, I don't even know how to answer because I was so researched on what I believed in, but I couldn't defend or argue with them because it was like, do you know what you're doing? So we had to really take it on our own, and that was not easy. I mean, we were chastised, by everything that we were doing. So when we decided to travel, we're like, okay, I would, contact people on reference. Like, what do I do? Like, she's never drinking milk because I thought it was crazy why would another species drink another species' milk? Like, that doesn't make any sense. We're the only ones that do it. So I didn't want to bring in dairy. So I was starting to just research all that type of stuff that would allow me to make a better decision. But it was risky, and we know that there were certain risks, but we took certain precautions. I mean, I would get the holistic, type of, they would put like cocktails together and say, okay, you can take this to protect your body, So yeah, we did have an element of uncertainty, but it was also because the population's not educated on it either. So there's too much fear coming. We just blocked the fear and stayed with what we believe to be true. And I mean, kids getting dirty is what helps inoculate them from a lot of things.
I mean, do you keep that issue quiet? Like, do you keep your sort of how you like?
I think everyone
It's a
kind of
scary world we're
expects
in,
us
right?
to be
Right,
like,
yeah.
we're the ensemble family. They've
Yeah.
traveled the world. The kids, she's only had antibiotics once. And it was because she had I think a sinus infection. So like once, I mean, that's how they're supposed to be used,
Right.
And I took
So you're not anti-medicine altogether. We're in an
No,
emergency
we're not
situation. We're not
we're
going to avoid
like,
hospitals.
We're not burning Bibles or crosses, like
Right.
Like we believe in what the research and I think what medical has done for us. But our choices, we decided we wanted to make a really good choice, and the things that we were seeing were happening just were not allowing us to lean towards. We're only putting her life and her trust in medical industry or the government. I wanted her to help make her own decisions, and now she can. I mean, she's 12, she's getting ready to be 18. She's, able to make certain decisions on what she wants to do.
So you guys told me you were just in an RV. You went from I think it was up
Nevada,
northern Nevada all the way over to
Miami.
Miami. So you guys, and you do that a lot. You travel around. You just hop from place to place.
It was the craziest trip for how many days?
It's been 77 now. We're on 77 today.
77 days of being in an RV, going to Burning Man, being in different climates. I've never lived in the States for like longer than then never mind. But I've been here for a year. Like, I've never lived in the States, like officially. So it's cool. Like, we've been revisiting all these places that Americans would be like, that's what tourists go to. But I'm like, I'm a tourist in my own country. Like, I can actually say that.
So the philosophy, she sort of described that you didn't put upon Hanalei, this is what you need to do. You need to be thinking about the future. You said, what do you want to do now?
Yeah. We've always given her like permission. This is probably the best way. We've talked to her since she's like 4 years old as if she's a person. And when people come up like, what is your daughter's name? Or what does she like to eat? It's like, ask her. Yeah. Well, what does she ask her? So we've always given her that where she can make choices.
Yeah.
And for anywhere we go, we still, like, even when she's 4 or 5 years old, we're like, what do you want to do? And most people don't do that. So when she's been able to make choices at such a young age, it's becoming easier and easier.
But there'll be people that would say, certainly, you're the adults. You're parents. You've lived on this planet. Well, there's got to be something you impasse that you got to say. There's some certain rules to how you live in this world. How do you decide whether it's a rule, or do you give any rules at all?
Well, when we follow the rules, or we follow the laws, we break the rules. We're renegades that way, right? Because, I mean, yeah, certainly we have a very connected family. We hold very strong values as a family, how we treat people. But in reality, families need to do what's good for the family, and so that's how we've lived. Is we all make
Do
decisions.
you ever get
at the right
disciplined? Do
time.
they ever do you ever get timeouts? Like what's the discipline? I
One
want to hear
thing-
from you. I don't want to hear from them.
One thing is that my parents have completely taken out the words no, not, and don't.
Okay.
Those words haven't heard them say except for "you're gonna get hit by a car, please stop," or something like that. And it's always been like, be cautious, be aware, you're making your own decisions, but we want to give you both sides on how that decision is going to affect you.
Yeah.
Instead of them making the decision for me, they say, okay, if you walk across the street without looking, you have two options. You're going to get hit by a car, or you can look and you could see when is the right time to go, or like an example like that, or be cautious. Make sure that you're standing your ground. Make sure that you're doing these things. And I've always had the decision. I can say, no, I don't want to look both ways before I cross the street. But it's always been my decision and how I see it. And they just give me the...
We're a little more protective on the crossing the street
No,
thing.
I'm doing an example, okay? I'm doing an
Child
example.
That was a very
Services, we
edgy
gotta get in here.
example.
I'm
That's why
doing,
your kid in front of the highway.
I'm sorry, I was doing
Yeah.
an example. I thought
No,
it would make
I
more
think about this.
sense.
So I always say, because my parents pulled me out of school when I was in fourth grade, and then my brother, I was the oldest, so my brother and sister had, really were homeschooled all the way through. But my parents, really raised me to question authority. Now, I would always say that if there was one principle or law in my house, it was question authority. Trust your own instincts over all else. And I have to say that does not make parenting easy because you are the
They're
authority.
opinionated.
Well, and you're the authority. Like if you're telling your kids, question authority, then everything the parent's trying to get across, I'm like, well, I'm going to challenge that, Dad, because you told me that that's what I was supposed to do, and I'm not really grooving with it, So in the end, though, I mean, obviously, she seems you're free thinking, you're dynamic. Do you guys write books on this? And are you putting information out? So I want two books. First of all, how you draw the lines and get a kid to come out like this.
Yeah.
And then how the hell do you go from flat broke and travel the country 70, 80 days and survive? And I mean, it sounds really enviable. It sounds like
It's almost kind of ridiculous,
It
to be
is,
honest.
yeah.
It's been 12 years. This November 25th, we've been on the road for 12 years. Wow. Traveling around, we started off at 3 months, and then 6 months, and then a year. We've been in Bali, Indonesia for 4 years. That's the longest. But yeah, I mean, it starts off with, I was born, my dad said, kids are meant to be seen and not heard.
Right.
So I immediately was like, that's ridiculous.
Right.
I have an opinion, right? So I was that person.
Right.
So when I want to raise a child, I'm like, well, I want her to give her some leeway to figure this thing out, you know? And so thank goodness we stopped the one, because we're like, you know what? She's kind, she's empathetic, she sees the world and allows us to kind of so she hasn't really been a battler, because there's no reason to battle in anything. If she states her claim and no, I do want to go play with this kid on the beach. And this is why, Mom, I'll be aware. And she would stake her claim, this is how I'm going to react in this moment. So we're like, okay, we let her, but of course we're always kind of there. Most, I think, families and kids are so, don't do that, be aware. And all of our bad energy is all over the kids. So they're immediately got fear subconsciously.
They're not
full of
living in their own
fear.
body. They're just what Mom and Dad thinking the whole
Exactly.
time versus what am I thinking.
Yeah.
One of the questions you had is for Hanalei is did the parents push? We're not in the fashion world. We're not artists.
Yeah.
She's figuring out her own way, and we're kind of just guiding, along. So
I mean, we weren't aware. She made him go in and count the amount of, remember that? Counting T-shirts that Dad had? And they tallied the amount of water he was wasting. You can't unhear that. We didn't know anything about it. So she started, looking at it and researching slow fashion. We're like, now we want to support that, because if kids have something, a stand, we always say our motto is be kind with our words, but strong with our stand.
Has she been homeschooled this whole time, or in and out?
I've chosen how I wanted to be schooled. For the first couple
like
of
3 years
years,
ago.
till 3 years ago, I've been wanting to go in school because I've been wanting to choose to be with people, to be with friends, and I have chosen that. My parents wanted to put me in homeschool. They just wanted me to be happy. And so recently, when my fashion thing started, I'm like, I actually want to do this. This is actually what I love, and I want to put more time. The schooling system wasn't helping me in a way where it was expanding my brain. Instead, it was expanding my brain on things like numbers, more of the academic side. When I'm a creative, I want to create things, I want to be different, and I never had a place to express who I wanted to be. I never had a place where I could learn business, to learn the money side on working and creating your own company. So I decided in myself that I wanted to homeschool, and I wanted to learn more about the things that I want to learn and not just the things that the education system wants me to learn.
Well, I mean,
Yeah,
you guys are doing something right, and we could do this, all day long. You're touring around. You're outspoken. So if we want to follow the work that you're doing, give me some websites. Like, what is it,
What is yours?
Yeah, what's your website?
HanaleSwan.com is where you can find all my fashion, find all of my ideas and all of my inspiration, and learn a little bit more about me.
Cool. And how about you guys?
Unstoppable Family. Yeah.
UnstoppableFamily.com?
Yeah.
Exactly.
UnstoppableFamily.com.
All right. Awesome. Look, I think that you're an inspiration. You're out. You're talking about it. I keep saying, in this movement of health, really, and that you guys are covering a whole other gamut. I mean, when you're talking about raising kids, but when it comes to health, we all have to, I think, come out of the closet and say, hey, our kids are clean, they're pure, and they're doing really well. If we don't represent these great families like yourselves, then why will there be a change? I think there's a lot of people, I hope, that see this and say, geez, I want that. You're emulating something really beautiful and powerful. So thank you for coming in today and sharing your family with us.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Take care, you guys. Keep traveling. I hope to see you out there, maybe in Bali.
Yeah, come visit.
Crash in your house.
This guy will take you surfing.